I'm doing well. I probably have more energy than y'all do, if that's even possible, because I haven't had to anchor this show all day, but I just
Well,
get to sit and watch.
we saved the best for last, Liz. We saved the best for last.
Too
Go ahead and take
kind.
it away.
Too kind. Well, thank you. And anytime someone's going to give me an opportunity to talk about information security, cybersecurity, and tell me I can invite whomever I want, of course I'm going to go for some of the most awesome people I know. And Magen, some of y'all may have seen her through her work with Urbane Security or any of the other roles she's had in over a decade working in cybersecurity. Or perhaps around DEF CON, B-sides. I mean, really, Magen, where haven't you been? But
I don't know.
First of all, welcome. And for those who haven't had a chance, please go check out Magen's bio on LinkedIn. But what really intrigued me were conversations we started having probably several years ago, as I found out you were studying for your master's, and it really just wasn't a regular, I'd say, master's, but you were going in a direction that I hadn't truly connected the dots. So first of all, welcome. Thank you. And tell us what crazy idea got in your head and how you started down that path.
Yeah. So when I originally went for my master's degree, I thought I was going to go into organizational psychology, learn about sustainable change, and try to use that as a way to maybe help teach folks in the InfoSec how to train our users better, focus more on learning theory, stuff like that. But then I realized that I found that really boring. And that wasn't where my passion was. Yeah, it happens.
And I mean, some people tell me that when they think about reading policy and contracts and documents, that they think that sounds really boring.
That's fair.
So one of the things we have, and hopefully everyone's caught the earlier talks, but we've really been invited into most of our speakers' homes all day. That ordinarily we might be, for example, if it was a B-sides, I'd say back in the day, we would have been in a conference center. We would have seen that, or maybe even somebody would have been streaming from their office conference room. But we have gotten to know everyone's design styles, perhaps. We've seen more of Bryson's Unicon hoodies. So when we talk about, these boundaries and burnout and everything, kind of sometimes you got to flash them back, know where this started. And so tell us a little bit about boundary management and how we bled into our streaming from our house, which, by the way, your house looks very nice. Hopefully you didn't have to clean up your office.
No. All you got to see is like from the neck up, right? So as long as everything the neck up is clean, we're fine.
Exactly. So when we talk about boundary management, what's a little bit of the history of how even studying this came about?
Yeah, so I think some of the first studies started in the mid to early 1980s, and they found that generally roles that we fulfill and activities that we perform fall into either a work domain or a life domain. And they say life domain is basically anything outside of the office or outside of work. And historically, we had a commute to and from work every day. Working from home was almost unheard of back then, right? So you had pretty clear boundaries about, okay, I'm at work, this is work me, and then I have the drive home to kind of transition into like home me. Mm-hmm. But now that we're working from home, we don't really have that opportunity anymore.
Well, and I mean, that's when I would listen to my podcasts and different, books and music and everything else. So when we talk about those work, non-work, boundary management profiles, what are people thinking of? What should they be thinking of?
Okay, so there's a whole nother study or a whole nother field of study that refers to boundary management and boundary profiles. So these can be things like folks who are like integrators. They have an easy time blending their work selves with their home selves. These are the people who bring a lot of themselves into their work cubicles, or they'll be checking their emails late into the night, stuff like that.
Oops.
I know. Whoops, guilty. Right.
Yeah, well, and so we keep hearing these terms, and you and I are discussing these terms such as burnout. What does that even mean? How do we get on the same, I'd say, pulling from the same bingo card? When you hear those terms, what are there different kinds? And we titled our chat Occupational Burnout. So tell me more.
Yeah, so usually when folks talk about burnout, it's related to the job. Burnout actually came around when you talk about caregivers. So think of nurses, people who have elderly or sick parents, young children, etc. So it can be very taxing to take care of other folks all day, every day, as well as tend to your own needs. So that's where burnout kind of came from. The idea of occupational burnout is when you experience high levels of stress for a long period of time at work. And that's going to leave you feeling exhausted emotionally, physically, and emotionally.
Okay, so how do I know the difference? I mean, I can tell you I am exhausted, I'm tired, but at the same time, SCYTHE is a growing startup. So how do I know it's not just the fact that I have more laundry to do, or that the great news is we're building in new customers? So how do I start separating those?
So the problem is that burnout is sometimes, or actually very often, confused with stress. So with stress, you have overengagement, where you have like your long laundry list of things you need to do. But with burnout, you feel disengaged. You might still have that long laundry list, but you don't have the drive to complete it like you might when you're just stressed.
Okay, so what you're saying is there's a difference between not enough coffee in the morning and actually being, that, oh, look, another breach, like, oh, look, another issue that needs solving.
Yeah.
And how do I start to identify which one it is? Are there telltale signs, or is it, how do I start breaking it down?
So there's different signs, like I said, physical, emotional, and behavioral signs that you'll start to see different people exhibit depending on how bad the burnout is, and also just on the individual. Kind of like how none of us get sick the exact same way. None of us are going to experience burnout the exact same way. So you might find yourself getting sick more often, change in like habits or appetite. You start feeling more like a failure more than usual. I know a lot of us have a problem with imposter syndrome. So when that starts getting louder than usual, that's when you need to start worrying. If you're usually a go-getter or type A person and you notice that you're starting to procrastinate more, it takes you longer to complete a task, you're probably on the road to burnout. And a lot of folks also will find that a prolonged experience of burnout can lead to anxiety and depression too.
So
Or
you're
further
saying
exacerbated.
a pandemic that has lasted over a year might be causing some drain, And I mean, but what are some of the impacts? So, okay, either I or I've noticed on my team, people who would ordinarily perform at a higher level, I start to see things slipping out. And so the red flags start popping up. How can I help that? Like, first of all, what impact does this have other than just, oh gosh, as a human, I want to take care of my team and myself and make sure all of us are operating at the best, highest level we can across the board. But what are some of the other costs?
So you're actually going to start seeing a decrease in motivation, morale, and productivity. So these are like the three big things that everybody in organizational psych love to talk about. It's kind of like their version of our like CIA triangle.
And so when you start seeing this drop in the motivation, morale, what are some of the, obviously one size isn't going to fit all. So what are some of the, I've identified, okay, this is happening, and a drop in motivation, drop in morale means a drop in productivity, which means more work for others, exacerbating the problem, or, hey, it's not just I can't afford to go on vacation, but the company's going to suffer and our customers will suffer. So what are some of the ways we should start approaching it and not falling into that bias pitfall of, well, okay, I know it works for me, so obviously this should work for everybody.
Right. So you kind of hit the nail on the head there. It's going to vary wildly depending on the person. Some of the common things that folks recommend is like reaching out to other people on your team if you feel comfortable doing so and being like, hey, is it just me that's experiencing this, or I'm feeling this way, and just having that kind of camaraderie can sometimes be enough to be like, okay, it's not just in my head, I'm not imagining it. And then you can start taking steps to try to fix the situation or to help your situation. And then folks do love the, trying to think, the hobby solution, right?
Right. I mean, I took up cross stitching, but is that really solving things? I mean, it seems like, okay, that's giving me an outlet, but am I cross stitching while on a conference call at 9:00 at night because the workday hasn't ended? How do you keep that bleed over and, again, that protecting those boundaries?
That's a tough one. I mean, scientists are still researching that, One thing that I like to do is I take an approach of role fulfillment versus like trying to do a whole work-life balance thing. I actually really dislike the term work-life balance because it's misused and marketed kind of inappropriately from how it started. And basically with role fulfillment, the goal is to figure out, okay, here are the different roles that I fill in like my work life, in my personal life, within my community, and other areas that are important to me. And then I need to figure out, okay, am I doing activities every day that meet whatever needs I have within those different roles? Because usually when I start feeling burned out, it's because I'm not addressing the community role that's important to me. Or I've moved stuff out of my home domain into my work domain. And then that's when I start feeling really burned out and like, oh, I can't catch up. I want to be over here with my family, but I'm thinking about work, right?
Mm-hmm. So how granular should you get, or is it a personal, okay, there's work, but do I separate my work, my job, from my career? Do I build out, okay, home life? Is it, home, or is it the relationships with family, relationships with friends, relationships with my video games that bring me joy? Mm-hmm. How far should you go into creating those buckets?
I usually keep a pretty high level. I think it's better to, especially when you first start, take the time to be like, okay, here are like general categories or buckets
The
for the
big
roles that I like
roles,
to fill. Yeah.
without getting into the, so perhaps a player, not necessarily, well, she's a left wing on the JV team at, going back to my high school
I was
soccer
like, what
days.
sport is that? Oh, soccer. Okay. I got
A
the baseball.
striker,
I'm
stopper.
sorry.
And so once you've created and been able to identify where those roles are and defining it, and actually, let's go back because you mentioned you don't like work-life balance because that's not how the term started. So
Yeah.
rewind. What was the term intended to be? Because I mean, I've been guilty of using this everywhere as well, and even in talking to our team and trying to encourage. So where did it originate? How did we get here?
So work-life balance. I can't remember exactly when it came about, but instead of this idea of like equilibrium between work and life, it's actually more subjective, and it's going to focus on how we manage and how we negotiate all these roles we fill. So that way we have the term that they like to use is satisfaction and good functioning in the work and life domains in order to find that balance.
So it's not really a seesaw as much where it's one or the other. It's all these different pieces coming together, more trying to think of it like a balancing act of, but with multiple four corners, perhaps not just the two. Well, so when you start looking at, okay, I've identified, I haven't, I know the symptoms, I'm treating some of the symptoms. How do you dig deeper into that root cause analysis?
This is when I pitch therapy to everybody again. I mean,
Yeah.
therapy is an awesome tool to use and to, have somebody who's completely objective about your situation in your life and be like, okay, here's what's wrong. How do I feel like I have a control of things? Because a lot of times when you experience burnout, you feel a lack of control over things at work or at home or whatever is causing the prolonged stress.
So when you talk about therapists, and that's one of the things I think sounds like a benefit of being able to connect with more healthcare through online and other. You don't have to be in person. And how do you find out what resources perhaps your company offers or companies, how do you evaluate that, start the conversations? Because I know one of the things we try to do at SCYTHE is really ensure that everyone's aware of, hey, these are the benefits being offered, or are there community resources that can help connect you if you don't have coverage through work?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I think one of the side benefits of this whole global pandemic forcing us to be in home and relying on technology more is the offering of telehealth and remote psychology and psychiatry appointments has increased greatly. I mean, just even 5 years ago, there weren't a lot of professionals out there that were doing long distance sessions with their patients.
And do you feel like when you start building down and identifying the different, like I said, the root cause, how do you focus on or the difference between mitigation and prevention, and really build out those? Because we go back to my cross stitch example. I mean, one's going to help me feel better, but it's not necessarily going to start solving the problem when, again, I'm there is no commute. My commute's disappeared.
Yeah.
My office is wherever I happen to be, dealing with other issues at any given moment. I mean, my office has even been known to be my car. at times. So how do you start getting into that mitigation versus prevention?
So it's kind of a fine line, right? Like everything, I feel like I'm giving the consultant the answer to everything, like it depends.
No, that's the lawyer answer.
Oh, that's the lawyer answer. Okay.
Tell me more. Tell me more. So what are some issues to spot? Like, okay, this is definitely mitigation, but this is definitely prevention. Or is the line blurred depending on the nature of teams, individuals, and really what how your organization is structured?
I would say it's pretty blurred, especially since it's really easy for something you're using for mitigation and stress relief to kind of become a crutch. And then it's no longer mitigating or preventing anything, just distracting and making you feel worse about everything.
You mean like if I don't manage to get time in for my run, it may cross the line. So how do you give yourself that, or even when other friends or colleagues come in to let them know it's okay. Like you can, it's okay to ask for help. It's okay to loosen your grip a little bit on this, that we'll cover it. I mean, how do you ask for help or forgiveness?
Yeah, it can be hard to do that. I think it's really important for members of management. Like I'm really lucky here at Urbane that if it looks like I'm struggling or having a difficult time with something, one of my members of management will come up to me and be like, "Hey, is everything okay?" Not in a like, "Oh, we know you're messing up and now we're asking you this loaded question." It comes from a place of like actual trust and caring, like, "Hey, we want to make sure that you're all right." So I think it's very important for members of management to actually care about the members of their team and take that step, even though it might be awkward, to be like, "Hey, I've noticed that, you haven't been taking a lunch break, or you haven't had time off in like a year and a half."
Well, and we laugh. I've really liked being able to see some of the companies, and I don't know if Urbane's done this as well, but I've seen Cisco, SCYTHE has done this, where basically it's, okay, folks, pencils down. Everybody needs to turn off, if there's, of course, if you make sure customers are handled, but otherwise, pencils down, take a step back. And I mean, how have you worked with? I know Urbane, Aaron, and everybody are very, very receptive to different suggestions. How have y'all built that in with what you're doing?
So it was actually already in place by the time I got over here. I've been like really lucky. It was funny. My first vacation that I took while working with Urbane, I logged in to our messaging app, and like immediately Aaron's like, "I know you're not checking your work email."
Yeah,
and that's what we need. I appreciated that so much because when I started security consulting, I don't even remember when. That hurts.
Don't do the math. I mean, because
don't do the math. But yeah, back when I started, I worked for a company that kind of wanted to be like a big four company. And I was told day one, the first thing you do and the last thing you do every single day is check your email. And I'm just like, okay.
On top of a lot of us in information security, cybersecurity, our job is to, at some point, tell people their baby is ugly. And so it's already a high stress. If you miss a step, something bad could happen. If you don't get, so there's already that pressure cooker environment. What are culturally, I do feel like there has been a shift towards recognizing, at the very least, we need to move away from that. Do you feel that's the case? Is there just a cultural shift, or at least we're now talking about it a little bit more?
Yeah, we're definitely talking about it a lot more. And you have companies like Urbane, and then like you've said, like SCYTHE, that are giving us the tools we need to keep ourselves healthy and well mentally, so we can do the hard work that's associated with protecting our organizations and our customers. So
yeah, well, and so one of the things that we started off talking about, the boundaries are starting to disappear a little bit, and as organizations look at, and hopefully more people are becoming vaccinated, and we're seeing a tide turn in the pandemic. So as companies are looking at either increasing travel, working people slowly back in. So as we see some of these boundaries start to reappear a little bit, what are some of the things that, from a kind of high level, what would you recommend to companies as they're looking at this, of how do we help reestablish some of those boundaries in a good way?
that's actually a really good question.
So in other words, that's going to be your next thesis.
Yeah, right. No, like, to kind of turn that around back to you, is there anything that you guys have been doing to like prepare for the transition back? Because a lot of organizations, they're not even talking about going back into offices until like the last quarter or so of this year, if that.
Well, and see, we have a kind of hybrid approach that this really didn't cause us to miss a step, in that we were already a largely remote, if not entirely remote, workforce. We just get creative, but that kind of goes back to, we might be taking meetings from someone's house. So how do we, and is it even a managerial approach or a big picture, looking at, okay, how do we permit some of those, those buckets, and saying, okay, we need to be aware of, we're in this space, or that, all right, some of our team members don't feel comfortable turning on a video camera during the call, and recognizing that's okay. Like,
Yeah.
That is okay. No explanation needed. Not everybody's on the same. Is that one of the ways that, from an organizational thing, should we change? Do we keep going? And really, who should we look for guidance, so it's not just the pop, feeling the pressure of, a lot of, I've called the armchair psychologists, armchair quarterbacks, that, anything happens, suddenly everyone's an expert on large shipping navigation, that, I can't believe a captain got stuck in the Suez. Like, let me just tell you, with currents and weight balance.
What a rookie mistake.
I mean, yeah. So how do we know, if we look for guidance, how do we know how to find the resources that have actually studied this and have spent the time? How do we know to find the experts to pull guidance from, rather than just someone who read an article and looked at a map of potential currents at that particular time?
So I think a good place to start would be to actually go to places like the American Psychological Association, or different peer-reviewed sites or journals or things like that, versus Fortune 100 tells me that in order to achieve, Fortune magazine tells me that in order to achieve work-life balance, I need to wake up at 5 a.m. and then do yoga, and then have a high-protein breakfast, and then take a shower. Oh, and that's all before 7 a.m. And then you got to like read for an hour and journal. Don't forget to journal and update your mood board. And all of that stuff can be so overwhelming and doesn't work for everybody.
Well, and that's what we were talking about, and going back a little bit to that one size fits all, and even just letting yourself understand it's okay. I mean, I don't journal. I've tried. It didn't work. And so finding those resources other than going to reaching out to healthcare resources, what are some other techniques that, how do you identify Lone Ranger, Code Red, danger, and know and say, okay, I need to, again, go back to where they start. Like, how do I know where to go or when to ask for the help?
As soon as you start feeling underwater, that feeling of, okay, I'm sitting in front of my computer and it doesn't matter how much coffee I've taken my medication, I've done everything right that's worked for me historically, but like you get that glazed over look when you're doing something that you previously found engaging or that like gave you life,
So when I sit and do my role analysis, and I look at all the different roles. So I've identified the roles that I fill, both within the company, within my personal life, and I've got that so how do I learn to take a step back and incorporate more of that in the day-to-day, where I identify, oh, well, I didn't get to go I'm not able to go to the gym and practice jujitsu with my teammates or I know that's one of the things.
Jujitsu?
Within SCYTHE, we have some serious athletes and practitioners, but when I start identifying that some of my buckets aren't getting filled, how do I bring that? How do I start those changes?
So some of it can be really hard to start up on your own. What I like to do is when I start feeling overwhelmed, the first thing to go for me is I'll forget to eat lunch, or I'll skip the gym, right? Mm-hmm. And so I built in like accountability buddies, if you will, to just be like, hey, it's noon and you've been online this whole time. Have you eaten lunch? Or if I miss like 2 or 3 days in a row of like a CrossFit workout, my gym buddy is just like, hey, we're going to work out this evening. Deal with it.
Well, and is that something from a managerial standpoint, should you look at incorporating into or encouraging, and I detest all the different ways I get pulled in, that those lines blur between Slack, text, email, our other project management softwares, Discord, all these different ways to pull me back in. And so that on the flip side, I did joke the other day that I was reviewing contracts and negotiating things sideways on the couch. But should you look at building stuff out like that out for your team members or your employees to encourage those relationships of, hey, how do we create those check-in? I see a lot of the red team fit, creating that accountability within. Are those good things? Are there ways we could do it better?
So I think from a community standpoint, I think the red team fit is very similar to like my friends that I rely on for accountability. It's built in there. And if, like, hey, if I don't post about, like if Dave Kennedy stopped posting his workout one day, we would all be concerned, like, is Dave okay?
No, that would be considered a plea for help. And I would be very concerned. So yeah.
So there's that. And then from a work standpoint, you got to be careful because you also don't want to overstep any boundaries that your employees might have, right? So it's a really fine line for management that they have to tread. So what you could do in those kinds of cases is, from the work domain side, have those one-on-one meetings. It's very easy for those to fall by the wayside, especially when things get really busy on a project, or something else is happening in the organization. So you can use these one-on-one meetings with your manager or other coworkers to just discuss what's happening. How are you feeling? Do you need assistance with anything?
And as you know, and we've talked about, particularly as SCYTHE navigates how we are moving back and shifting, what are some resources, kind of follow-up information? You talked about American Psychiatric Association. Are there other good go-to, like where can people go to learn more? I mean, obviously they could read your master's thesis, I mean, among others, but what are some things that, as a manager, executive, or even just an employee, that they should go look at and identify new techniques, new methods for prevention?
So Psychology Today is actually a really good resource for a online-based outlet, with journalists. They actually sit there and read the studies. It's not hey, I've read the abstract and here's my opinion of the abstract. A lot of them are psychiatrists and psychologists, and they understand the science and the methodology behind it, and they do a pretty good job about explaining things. And those who aren't professionals in the arena, they've done enough research and studies on their own that they understand the gist of what they're reporting. So it's a little bit more responsible and accountable. So I definitely recommend Psychology Today. And that's also a great way to find a counselor or therapist in your area as well.
Well, and that was going to be my next question, is you hear that, and I think warning people not to get discouraged if at first you don't succeed, that it's okay to not gel with someone or their approach or something. Where are some good community? I mean, are there some good community places or places within the community, or kind of one-stop shops to find links to mental health professionals in your area?
Yeah, so Psychology Today, like I said, has a online search function where you can narrow it down based on the specialty you're looking for, as well as the area that you're willing to travel to, or if you want online. They also list what insurances that the therapists and psychologists accept. And then also a lot of health insurance companies have incorporated these searches into their websites as well.
Well, and so if someone comes to you as either a team member and stuff, what are some good responses to help them build out those the boundaries and help identify? Obviously the wrong responses are very easy to point out of, oh, don't be a wimp, suck it up, buttercup. Other than those, what are some good ways, or is it something where even role playing and practicing stuff like that, is that helpful? What is some of the guidance you can give, like some takeaways to give to everyone listening in?
Well, first of all, just recognize that a lot of us, almost all of us, have experienced burnout at some point. So just to let your teammate or your employee know, hey, it's rough. I've been there as well. Life for shorty shouldn't be so rough. And then from there, just be like, how can I help you? How can I best support you to get you back to where you were?
And it sounds like really letting them, I was gonna say, and letting them build out, and listening, I think, is always a reminder. And I fall into this trap where it's like, oh, I know the answer because I know it worked for me, or I know it's not working for me. So let me project that onto you. And that's not always helpful.
Right. We want to help. We want to fix the thing, especially in InfoSec. We are a whole community of people who want to fix the thing. And so it can be really hard for some of us to just kind of take a step back and be like, okay, you need to navigate this discussion because it's your life and your roles that we need to help you strike a balance with.
Well, thank you so much. And Megan, again, I feel like everyone has just gotten to listen to one of our coffee chats when we sync up. So follow Megan on Twitter. And if like one little last like nugget of knowledge, kind of what would it be?
Just you're not alone. We've all experienced at one time or another, and just don't be afraid to reach out. It's scary, but that like single step can do you a whole world of good.
Well, thank you. And also, I guess it helps to know that this too shall pass. And eventually we will stop seeing the insides of each other's homes. Hopefully not as much. Hopefully the cute dogs and
the cats.
Like the kids, stuff like that. I'm all for it. But anyway, thank you for sharing. And George, I'm just disappointed because I'm going to note, and Bryson, don't look at, y'all both have adorable dogs at your respective homes.
Yeah,
where are they?
Chance? I haven't seen Chance in like a week.
Chance is at camp because occasionally I recognize that his bucket of socialization wasn't getting filled. So I said, you know what, buddy? I hear you. And I, as the manager of your schedule, I will provide a solution.
That is fantastic. No, amazing. Great talk. It did feel like a coffee chat, which was fantastic. It's a great way to wrap up the conference on a Friday afternoon, and definitely things that needed to be said and considered. So thank you so much, Megan, for coming on, and Liz.
Thank you for having me.
George, is it okay if my coffee was a gin and tonic?
It is completely okay if your coffee's a gin and tonic. I expect
that's why you have these kinds of
correct.
That's not coffee in my Starbucks.
Well, I think this is it. We did it. Another successful Unicon, the second annual Unicorn Conference. Thank you all for joining. That's how we clap in Zoom life. We really appreciate all the speakers, all the attendees, the Gula Foundation, the winners. Congratulations to them again. And yeah, we're here. You know where to find us, right? Because we're all active on social, on LinkedIn, on Twitter. We put out a little form to get some feedback, if you don't mind. Of course, chance to win some swag. And if you do want swag, swag.scythe.io, including swag for babies and pets, is available. And that all goes to a good cause. And I hope to see a lot of you tomorrow for the Great Shave. I don't think anyone is looking into this or as happy that this is occurring as Liz and I. We do troll Bryson behind the scenes on a daily basis, which is fantastic. And by the way, I am going to put it out there. We are hiring at SCYTHE. So
yes.
We are looking for someone with experience in adversary emulation, but on the blue team side, doing detection engineering, maybe cyber threat intelligence. Check it out. It's posted on LinkedIn. Get to work with a lot of fun people, including Liz, Bryce, and myself that were on here today. And of course, the rest of the herd. So yeah, with that, thank you all. I don't know if there's anything else to say. Y'all are all.
I mean, I look forward to seeing everybody tomorrow at the Great Shave. Check out the registration. We have already got over $10,000 in pledges for the Women's Society of Cyber Jitsu. So hope to bring even more money to the charity there for a good cause.
Awesome. Well, thank you all once again. Bye-bye.
Goodbye.